You're about to jump into occupied France in complete darkness. You're wearing about 70 pounds of gear, weapons, and ammunition strapped to every part of your body. Your parachute adds another 30 pounds. That's over 100 pounds total, and you're jumping at 500 feet with enemy tracers lighting up the sky. Every item you carry has been chosen for one reason: to keep you alive and fighting when you hit the ground. This is what every American paratrooper carried on D-Day. Let's start with the weapon most paratroopers carried that night, the M1 carbine. This wasn't the standard M1 Garand you see in most World War II footage. The carbine was specifically designed for airborne troops because it weighed just 5.5 pounds and measured only 35 inches long with its folding stock collapsed. Regular infantry carried the Garand, which weighed almost 10 pounds and stretched 43 inches. When you're crammed into a C-47 with 17 other guys and trying to squeeze through a narrow door into the darkness, those extra inches and pounds matter. The carbine fired a .30 caliber round from a 15-round detachable magazine, giving paratroopers decent firepower without the bulk. The M1 Garand was still issued to some paratroopers, especially NCOs and officers who preferred its stopping power. This rifle weighed 9.5 pounds empty and fired the powerful 30-06 Springfield cartridge from an 8-round N-block clip. The Garand had better range and hitting power than the carbine, reaching out effectively to 500 yards compared to the carbine's 300. But that came at a cost. The rifle was 43 inches long, making it awkward in the confined spaces of aircraft and gliders. Each man who carried a Garand typically jumped with 80 rounds of ammunition in clips, adding another 5 pounds to their load. The distinctive ping of the ejecting clip became one of the most recognizable sounds of the war. Every paratrooper carried the M1911A1 pistol as a backup weapon. This 45 caliber handgun weighed 2.5 pounds loaded and held 7 rounds in the magazine, plus 1 in the chamber. Colt designed the original 1911 back in, 1911, and it proved so effective that the military kept using it through Vietnam. Paratroopers loved it because if your main weapon got damaged in the jump, or if you found yourself in close quarters combat, the 45 hit like a freight train at close range. Most men carried at least 2 extra magazines, adding another pound to their kit. The pistol rode in a canvas holster on the hip or sometimes in a shoulder holster under the reserve parachute. The M1 Bayonet served double duty as both a weapon and a tool. This 10-inch blade weighed just under a pound with its scabbard and attached to the M1 Garand's barrel for close combat. But paratroopers found it more useful as a general-purpose knife for cutting parachute lines, opening ration cans, prying things open, and a dozen other tasks. The bayonet came with a plastic grip and a steel crossguard. It wasn't fancy, but it was tough and reliable. Most guys kept it sharp and accessible because you never knew when you'd need to cut yourself free from a parachute tangled in a tree or caught on a fence in the dark. Fragmentation grenades were essential, and every man carried at least 2 of them. The MK2 grenade weighed about a pound and packed 2 ounces of TNT wrapped in a serrated cast iron shell. Soldiers called them pineapple grenades because of their distinctive shape. You pulled the pin, released the spoon, and had about 4 to 5 seconds before it exploded, sending metal fragments flying in a 30-foot kill radius. Paratroopers typically clipped them to their harness webbing or stuffed them in pockets where they could reach them quickly. In the chaos of night combat, grenades often proved more useful than rifles for clearing buildings and bunkers. The Gammon grenade was something special that only airborne troops used regularly. British paratroopers developed it, and American airborne units adopted it for D-Day. Unlike the standard fragmentation grenade, the Gammon was essentially a cloth bag attached to a detonator that you filled with plastic explosive, typically C2. You could adjust the size from half a pound up to 2 pounds depending on your target. The genius was its versatility. Need to blow a door? Fill it light. Taking out a tank? Pack it heavy and stick it on the armor. The impact fuse meant it exploded on contact, perfect for bunkers and vehicles. Each one weighed whatever you made it weigh, but most guys carried the components and some C2 blocks. Ammunition took up a huge chunk of the load. Carbine ammunition came in 15-round magazines, and most paratroopers jumped with at least 10 magazines, giving them 150 rounds. Each loaded magazine weighed about half a pound, so that's 5 pounds just in carbine ammo. Some men carried even more, stuffing magazines into every available pocket and pouch. The ammunition itself was lighter than Garand ammo because the .30 carbine round was shorter and used less powder. But 150 rounds doesn't last long in a firefight, and resupply wasn't guaranteed when you're scattered across the French countryside behind enemy lines with no idea where your unit is. The entrenching tool was a small folding shovel that every soldier carried. This thing weighed about 2.5 pounds and folded up to fit on your belt or pack. It had a triangular blade that you could set at different angles, letting you use it as a shovel or a pick. Digging was survival. Within minutes of hitting the ground, smart soldiers started digging shallow scrapes for cover. The Norman hedgerows provided some protection, but nothing beat getting below ground level when mortars started falling. The entrenching tool also worked as a weapon in desperate situations, though most guys hoped they'd never have to use it that way. The gas mask was something everyone carried but nobody wanted to use. Each mask weighed about 3 pounds in its canvas carrier bag and hung from your shoulder or attached to your belt. The military feared the Germans might use chemical weapons like they did in World War I, so gas masks were mandatory equipment. In reality, neither side used gas in Western Europe, making the mask dead weight. But nobody knew that on June 5th. The mask itself was hot, claustrophobic, and limited your vision and breathing. Carrying it meant sacrificing 3 pounds that could have been ammunition or food. But orders were orders, and fear of gas was real. The T-50 parachute was your lifeline, literally. This main parachute weighed 28 pounds and was designed specifically for paratroopers. It used a 28-foot diameter canopy made of silk or nylon that deployed when you exited the aircraft and your static line yanked the pack open. The T-50 gave you a descent rate of about 16 feet per second, which sounds gentle until you realize that's like jumping off an 8-foot wall. With a full combat load, you hit hard. The parachute harness distributed weight across your shoulders and legs with thick webbing straps, but with 70 pounds of gear plus the 28-pound chute, you were carrying almost 100 pounds before you jumped.
The reserve parachute was your backup if the main chute failed. This compact chest-mounted parachute weighed about 20 pounds and sat right in front of your chest, making it awkward to move and see your feet. You had to manually pull the ripcord if your main chute malfunctioned, but at 500 feet, you had maybe 3 or 4 seconds before you hit the ground. That's barely enough time to realize something's wrong, let alone deploy a reserve. Most guys knew the reserve was more psychological comfort than practical salvation at jump altitude, but it beat nothing. The reserve's smaller 24-foot canopy meant a harder landing even if it did open in time. The Musette bag was a canvas shoulder bag that paratroopers used to carry extra ammunition, rations, and personal items. This bag weighed about a pound empty, but could hold 15 to 20 pounds of gear depending on how you packed it. Most guys stuffed it with extra carbine magazines, a couple K-rations, spare socks, a razor, and maybe a few personal items like letters or photos. The bag had a single shoulder strap and a flap closure with buckles. It wasn't fancy or particularly comfortable when fully loaded, but it gave you a way to carry extra supplies without stuffing everything into your uniform pockets. The trick was packing it so you could access important items quickly in the dark. The first aid kit was small but essential. Each paratrooper carried a personal first aid pouch that weighed about half a pound and contained bandages, sulfa powder to prevent infection, and morphine syrettes for pain. The morphine came in small tubes with a needle attached that you could jab right through a uniform and into muscle. Medics carried larger aid bags with more supplies, but every man had his own basic kit for immediate self-aid or buddy aid. The sulfa powder was crucial because infections could kill you as surely as bullets if wounds weren't treated fast. Most guys kept their first aid kit somewhere easily accessible because if you needed it right now. Water was survival, and the canteen carried a quart of it in a metal container covered with wool felt. The whole setup weighed about 2.5 pounds when full and hung from your pistol belt in a canvas carrier with a snap closure. 1 quart isn't much water, especially if you're fighting in summer, but it was all you got until you could find more. The metal canteen could be used to boil water over a fire if needed, making it safer to drink from streams or wells.
The canvas carrier kept the metal from banging around and making noise. Some guys carried 2 canteens if they could manage the extra weight and bulk. K-rations were the standard combat food, and most paratroopers carried at least 2 of them on D-Day. Each ration came in a small waxed cardboard box that weighed about a pound and contained breakfast, dinner, or supper. Inside you'd find canned meat or cheese, crackers or biscuits, a dried fruit bar, instant coffee, sugar, gum, and cigarettes. It wasn't good food, but it was calories and it would keep you going. The rations were designed to be eaten cold, which was good because you weren't lighting cooking fires in enemy territory. 2 K-rations gave you about 3,000 calories, enough for a hard day of combat, assuming you had time to actually eat them. The M2 compass was a small brass instrument that weighed just a few ounces, but could save your life. This pocket compass had a liquid-filled housing with a luminous dial so you could read it in the dark, which was crucial when you landed scattered across Normandy in the middle of the night with no idea where you were. The compass was simple and reliable, with no moving parts to break. Officers and NCOs definitely carried them, and many enlisted men did too if they could get one. Finding your unit meant knowing which direction to move, and the compass gave you that information. It rode in a pocket where you could pull it out quickly. The leg bag was an innovation specifically for paratroopers to carry extra equipment. This canvas bag held weapons, ammunition, explosives, or other gear that was too bulky to carry on your body. It attached to your leg with straps and hung below you during the jump on a 20-foot rope. The idea was you'd release it before landing so it would hit the ground first and you wouldn't land on your equipment. Each bag could hold 40 to 50 pounds of gear. The problem was many bags broke free during the jump or the ropes broke, scattering equipment across the countryside. Lots of paratroopers never saw their leg bags again after they pulled the release handle. The fighting knife was a personal weapon many paratroopers carried beyond the standard bayonet. These ranged from issued knives like the M3 trench knife to private purchase weapons like the K-bar. A good fighting knife weighed about a pound and had a 6 to 7 inch blade designed for stabbing and slashing in close combat. Unlike the bayonet, these knives were balanced for throwing and fighting without being attached to a rifle. Paratroopers liked having a serious blade readily accessible because night combat often came down to close quarters fighting. Some men carried their knives in boot sheaths, others in chest rigs or on their belts where they could reach them fast. The SCR-536 handy-talkie radio was carried by officers and NCOs for communication. This portable radio weighed 5 pounds with its battery and could transmit and receive voice communications up to about a mile under good conditions. In the chaos of the airborne drops, with units scattered across a 25-mile area, these radios were crucial for reforming units and coordinating attacks. The radio was about 13 inches long and looked like a metal box with an antenna sticking out the top. Battery life was limited to about 30 hours of use, so you had to be smart about when to transmit. The range wasn't great in the Bocage country with its thick hedgerows blocking signals. The recognition panel was a simple piece of colored cloth used for air identification. This fluorescent orange or yellow panel measured about 2 feet by 6 feet and weighed just a few ounces folded up. When friendly aircraft flew over, you spread out the panel so pilots could see you were American troops and not Germans. Without these panels, trigger-happy pilots might strafe your position, thinking you were the enemy. The panel was especially important during the first few days after D-Day, when Allied fighters were hunting for German armor and troop movements. You kept it tucked away and only broke it out when you heard aircraft engines and needed to signal your identity fast. The maps were usually carried by officers and NCOs, printed on silk or treated paper so they wouldn't disintegrate if they got wet. These maps showed the Norman countryside in detail, with elevation contours, roads, towns, rivers, and hedgerows marked. Each map weighed just an ounce or two, but was worth its weight in gold when you landed miles from your drop zone in total darkness.
The maps were often divided into sectors with code names, and they included planned drop zones, rally points, and objectives. Most paratroopers had at least studied the maps before jumping, memorizing key terrain features and assembly areas. Having an actual map meant you could navigate instead of just stumbling around hoping to find friendly forces. The individual load of every paratrooper on D-Day represented careful calculation of what a man could carry, what he needed to fight, and what would keep him alive.
The total weight approached or exceeded 100 pounds for most men, and they jumped with all of it into darkness over enemy territory. Some men drowned in flooded fields because their heavy gear dragged them under. Others broke bones on hard landings. But the ones who made it down used every piece of that equipment to accomplish one of history's most daring military operations, fighting their way inland from the beaches and securing key objectives that made the amphibious landings possible. Each item had a purpose, and together they gave American paratroopers the tools they needed to succeed on the longest day.